Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. And today's guest is actually a returning guest, and I'm so excited to have you as a guest, Cameron Herold. Cameron,
hi, Adi. How are you?
Have you here? Good.
Thank you.
And we already recorded a podcast before, and I know you're very well known, but I'm still going to introduce you so people know who you are. So Cameron, you are the mastermind behind hundreds of companies' exponential growth, and you earned your reputation as a business growth guru. And, I got first introduced to you by, I'm going to give a shout out to a client, Paul Miller, who introduced me to your book, Double Double. And I read it and I go like, wow, this is amazing. And then I think we got connected through Jeremy Slate, which I'm also going to give him a shout out. And that's how we got connected. And I interviewed you for the podcast and we had a great conversation. And you are truly, I agree with the business growth guru, because I know you work with business owners, but specifically with the second in command, right? That is you are the founder of COO Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And you have your own podcast for the second in command. And you, I think, understand the importance of having a second in command like no one else. And
yeah, I've been really lucky that I've played both the entrepreneur. I've been running my own company for the last 15 years. I also had my own company when I was 21 years old. I had 12 employees. So I've been an entrepreneur for a number of years, probably close to 20 in total. But then I also played the second in command role for a few different companies. Most notably, I was the COO for a company called the 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and I grew them from 14 employees to 3,100 employees in 6 years. But that was the fourth company that I'd helped build. So I've been able to play both parts of the spectrum, and I really understand the entrepreneurial CEO DNA as well as the second in command COO DNA, which is why I wrote the book, The Second in Command. It's why I started the COO Alliance and also the Second in Command podcast.
Absolutely. And the new book is The Second in Command, Unleash the Power of Your COO, is going to be out when this podcast is going to be live. So people can go and find it on Amazon, right?
Yes, I'm only releasing on Amazon just because it just feels like no one's going to bookstores anymore. So I remove all the friction. It's one of the things I even think about with companies. Entrepreneurial companies tend to be like flies, and we bang our heads against the wall and we keep trying harder. And I always like the path of least resistance. And when everyone in the world is buying on Amazon, I may as well just put all my books on Amazon and forget about all the traditional bookstores. I used to be in the airport bookstores, and I was in all the Hudson's bookstores, and I was in Barnes and Nobles and Borders, but it's such a pain to deal with all of the fulfillment and the shipping and the warehousing and the print costs that I just decided I'm going to go with all 6 now of my books are only available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes.
Excellent. Okay, good. So again, the name of the book is, you can search Cameron Herold and you will see it, but it's The Second in Command, Unleash the Power of Your COO. So we'll also include the link to it in the podcast notes. But Cameron, we're going to dive into the book. Very interested in it. But first of all, I have a question. For those of you that are following Cameron on LinkedIn or on social media, you see that for the last, how long have you been moving from one country to another and basically living life in different places and still working, but not being in one place?
Yeah, we've been nomads for about 16 months full time, but then really over the last 5 years, I think we've been to around 40 countries together, my wife and I. But in the last 14 months, we've been to about 20 countries together. So we're full time on the road right now.
Wow. And what inspired you to do that?
I think a little bit of it is just the wanderlust of what's out there and what can we explore and what can we see. I think in many ways we were both tired of being in North America after, I'd lived in Vancouver for 25 years. I'd lived lived on and off in Arizona for 10. I've lived in Toronto for 4 years and Seattle for a couple of years. That I kind of got my feel. I've been to every single state in the United States except 3, and I've been to every province in Canada. And I just wanted to explore more. My wife was very similar. She just has an idea of wanting to explore and see what's out there. So if we can, stay on the road and explore different countries and just kind of explore where we might want to put some roots down later, but just keep traveling and seeing what's out there. So sometimes, and it's not always easy. I want people to understand that being on the road isn't always easy. There's lots of frustrations in trying to figure stuff out, but there's some weeks that we're on the road where we kind of call them work weeks, where we might be in a city. Like right now I'm in Jerusalem in Israel, and I'm in a bit of a work week right now where it's crank through work and get a bunch of work done. But last week we had a number of days where we went and did some sightseeing. We went to Jordan and went to Petra and went hiking, and we went down to the Dead Sea and floated in the Dead Sea and hiked Masada. And so sometimes we're kind of tourists and we're seeing what's happening, and other times we're just immersed or living in a city and getting to just kind of experience life in a different city, going walks for coffee or breakfasts or just getting groceries or going to the gym and just being immersed in different cultures. It's kind of interesting and fun too.
Absolutely. And do you find it hard to work in different places? Like, do you feel like you are, you use the word nomad, right? So it's kind of like without roots, right? I mean, that's the way I sometimes feel when I travel and I go, like, even though I can work from anywhere, sometimes I feel when I'm in a new place, it's kind of like you don't have your roots. So you don't have your familiar environment, right? It also, for me, contributes to the ability to feel like you are working.
Productive.
Do you ever feel that?
No, and I'll explain why. So I thought about this the other day. Why is it that I'm so comfortable working from wherever? When I was 20 years old, I started my first real company, right? I had 12 employees. I ran my first business while I was in university for 3 years. So for 4 months of the year, I was in my university dorm or living with these other guys in a home in a real student ghetto kind of place, running my business, hiring, doing marketing. And then I would go home to my parents' house for the summer and run my house painting business from my bedroom. So, for 3 summers, I really ran a business from a bedroom or a dorm room. So I became pretty good at just figuring it out. And then I was also on the road starting up all these franchises for College Pro Painters. I was opening them up in 2 different states and all over Ontario and Canada. So I was very much working from wherever back in those days. And then after kind of then building companies and working in offices, which I did for, 20 years, 15 years ago, I left 1-800-GOT-JUNK and I started working from home. So, that was 2007. I've really worked from home since then. So I've been able to work from a desk or a chair or a kitchen counter. I've been paid to speak now in 27 countries on every single continent, including being paid to speak in Antarctica earlier this year. So if I'm on the road this much for speaking and working with clients, I have to get used to being able to bob and weave and work from a hotel lobby or a coffee shop. Now, it doesn't mean it's always perfect, right? At times I'm in like, shit, I've got bad Wi-Fi, or oops, I can't film something today because I'm not in a great location to film something, or I wish I had a more comfortable space, or I wish my wife had more space so that we didn't feel like we're on top of each other, as I'm working. But I kind of bob and weave through that. So no, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's sure, the fact that I get to travel to all these countries and, go to Bhutan and go to India and go to Estonia and go to Sweden and, the Seychelles all in the last bunch of months is pretty darn cool too. So I'll take the ups and the downs.
That's amazing. Good. Good advice. All right. Well, let's jump into the book, The Second in Command, Unleash the Power of Your COO. So this is a book that you wrote about that subject, but you also have a course that's what we talked about in our last podcast, right? That also is COOs. And you have a whole bunch of data and information, because that's really like the COO Alliance. That's how you help COOs, right? So what prompted you to write this new book?
A couple things. I was getting asked by a lot of these entrepreneurial organizations that I've done speaking for. So a lot of YPO members, Vistage members, Entrepreneurs Organization or EO members, and then members of Genius Network and Strategic Coach. I was interacting with all of these CEOs, and they kept coming to me and saying, I need someone, to help me run my company. I need an integrator. I need to hire a COO. I need a VP of operations. I need a second in command. Where do I find one? What do they look like? And I kept getting all these people asking me all these questions. And I realized that there was a huge gap in the knowledge of people to know how do you recruit and hire and onboard and build a relationship with a really strong COO so that you have that yin and yang relationship. And I just decided to kind of codify the ideas that I've come up with, the ideas that others have pulled together, and really kind of put it out there and say, here's what I think are the best practices to really hire that true second in command. And the reason I even went with the book, and the reason I called it the second in command instead of, the COO handbook, was in many cases the second in command does not have the COO title, right? You could be the entrepreneur and you could call it an integrator, you could call it a general manager or a president or a VP of operations, or maybe your second in command is a CFO or a CMO. It's really who is if you were sick as the entrepreneur, if you were, in hospital for the next 6 months, who would run the business for you, or who's your partner, in really helping to scale this and build this out. So that was why I wrote the book.
Right. So you mentioned the yin and the yang and the relationship between the entrepreneur and the second in command. What are the main differences between the entrepreneur or the founder and then the second in command?
It's funny that you asked that. So yesterday I was a friend of mine who's the CEO of a very, very strong executive search firm, and he has helped me find probably 30 different COOs for clients over the years. So I have people emailing me to, asking me for introductions. So the CEO sent me a note yesterday, and he said, I'll read you the note. It's pretty funny. He said, I have a quick question for you. One of my clients is asking, can you explain the difference between a COO's duties and the CEO's duties? So I replied, CEO is vision, COO is execution. Vision without execution is hallucination, said Thomas Edison. That was it. And I see the yin and yang as the CEO's job is vision, or really vision and culture and legal and the board, but really vision, right? Where are we going? And the COO's job is how are we going to get there? And Thomas Edison was brilliant when he said vision without execution is hallucination, right? You need to have both of those to actually propel the organization.
Right. Because to that point, you can't, if you're just trying to execute without really having a vision or a strategy, it won't work either, right? Because then it's just like a train that goes nowhere, right? And we never arrive at a destination, or we don't know we're arriving at that destination.
Correct. Exactly right.
Yeah. So what are some of the best practices of hiring the COO? So let's say we have entrepreneurs who are listening to us right now and said, yes, I want to know. Of course, they need to read your book, but let's get them some information of what are the best practices in terms of finding that person?
Yeah, it's really understanding what you're looking for, right? If we remember that in Alice in Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't know what you're looking for, anybody could be a good COO, right? Any strong operations person could be good, but it won't be the match for you, right? It's almost like if you're looking for a partner or a spouse, you need to think about what's a good partner for me, what's a good spouse for me, because there's lots of potential mates. But what are you looking for that's a good match for you? So the way I think of it is the CEO, right, the entrepreneur, needs to first make a list of all of the areas of business that they're really, really good at, and all of the areas of the business that they really suck at, right? What are they good at? What are they not good at? Secondly, make another list. What are all the areas of the business that I get filled with energy when I work on them or when I think about them? And what are all the areas of the business that drain me of energy? Okay. So now you can kind of divide up the company into these two halves. What you want to then do is take all the areas that drain you of energy and that you're not good at and write a scorecard that describes all of those things. And then decide how much are you willing to pay someone to oversee all of that stuff and handle all that stuff for you. And based on what they're doing and what you're paying, you can put a proper title in place. Maybe it's a director of operations or a general manager. Maybe it's a VP operations or a president or a COO, but it's based on what are they going to do and what am I willing to pay? And that gives them the title. And that's really the starting point, right? That's how you know what to start looking for. And then it's also thinking about what are the core values of the organization that are so critical to me as the entrepreneur that I would never compromise those, and find a COO who has the skills to do what you need them to do. And they already live the core values that you already embrace as the CEO, right? So then you're starting to build the trust between you. And that's really the core starting points.
Great. Now, what about when you make, I agree with making those lists, but what about if I'm as an entrepreneur, I'm good at something, I do enjoy doing it. I mean, it's something that, like, let's say for me, okay, I mean, I don't mind doing bookkeeping. You know, I've done it before. I had a bookkeeping company in the past. You know, I'm good at doing it. I kind of like to look at the numbers and like to stay close to
yeah, but it doesn't fire you up. It doesn't fill you with it. You don't mind doing it.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't mind doing it, give that to the COO. Because what you're looking for is a COO who's like, I love finance. I love the operations. I love the number side of the business. I love that. Like, that fires me up. Awesome. Because it kind of only is okay for me. So if you can figure out the core, I'll give you a great example of this. Years ago, we were building up an auto body chain. In North America, it's now known as Gerber Auto Collision. In Canada, it was called Boyd Auto Body. It's the largest collision repair chain in North America, probably in the world now, about a $900 million company. And my partner, who is the CEO and the founder of the company, said to me, just as they were taking the company public, he said, you know, I hate dealing with the investment bankers. I hate dealing with the lawyers. I hate dealing with, you know, all the financy stuff of the business. And I said, well, why don't you just have Brock, our CFO, handle it all? And Terry said, well, they expect me to talk about it. I'm like, well, you're the CEO, delegate it to your CFO, who loves it, by the way. And all of a sudden, Brock lit up and he was excited that he got to and was allowed to deal with investment bankers and the lawyers and number side of the business. And then Terry went back into business development and deal making and sales and marketing, which was his genius, right? It was what fed him. It was his unique ability. So when you're hiring a second in command, delegate everything except genius to that second in command and have them handle all that stuff for you.
Absolutely. I think this is a great advice. And it's true because as entrepreneurs, we come from different backgrounds. We might be good at something. We don't mind. I mean, and you pointed out correctly, we might not mind doing it, but is it really the best utilization of our time? Because it's really looking also at the results. And, you know, we only have that many hours in the day, or at least that many hours that we want to work. So where are we going to? It's the biggest return on investment as anything. So what would you say? I know you coached many CEOs. What do you say to a CEO that has a hard time delegating?
So, yeah, and I've coached a lot of CEOs of real companies. Typically 50 to 500 employees is the group of clients that I work with. So I don't coach the smaller, you know, businesses that are still getting going. One of the things I tell the CEO is, look, it needs to get done, but not by you, right? Most CEOs don't clean their own toilets. They don't cut their own grass. They don't paint their own house. They don't change their own oil in the car. So they understand delegating some things, right? What I try to get them to look at is to delegate everything that's on their list that is below their effective hourly rate. So let's say that you're a CEO of a company and you earn $500,000 a year, right? So really your hourly rate is $250 an hour. If you're paid $250 an hour times 40 hours a week times 50 weeks a year, that equates to $500,000, okay? So if your hourly rate is $250, if you worked for me and I found out that you were working on $30 an hour tasks or $40 an hour tasks or $50, like if I found out that you were doing an $80,000 a year task, I would be upset. So you want to delegate all the stuff that's below your effective hourly rate. And then the CEO should be the chief energizing officer. They're the ones that should come into the organization and really fire up the organization and get people excited. So if you're drained of energy because you're working on areas of the business that aren't fun for you or you're not good at, you're showing up a little deflated. But if you can delegate everything except genius and only work on the stuff you're great at, it infuses energy in the rest of the organization, and that momentum creates momentum. So the reason you want to delegate is to show up as a better leader, to show up as that chief energizing officer, and to get people working on tasks that are pegged at roughly what their hourly rate is as well. Those are just kind of some of the reasons for it.
Makes total sense.
There's a second part. There's a second part of that. Sorry, that I just thought of as well. Often I'll hear a leader, not necessarily just the CEO, but often leaders as well, saying, "I can't delegate it to someone because they don't know how to do it. So it's easier for me just to do it myself." And to that, I always say, well, that's going to slow down your organizational growth. What you want to do is delegate it to the person and then coach them, train them, mentor them, cheer them on, right? Teach them how to do it so they can do it forever. But you, as leaders, we need to slow down and remember our core job is to grow people. It's why my course that's called Invest in Your Leaders is so important, is I believe that we should give all of our managers and leaders the 12 core leadership skills to scale the company. And if we spend more time growing them, we can delegate everything to them except the 2 or 3 core areas that we're amazing at that feed us with energy.
Absolutely. And I think this leads also to my next question. You answered some of it. I was going to ask you, what is the way or the process, or what advice do you have for CEOs to build that trust and relationship with the second in command? Because it is, as you said, it's the yin and the yang, right? But when you say yin and yang, obviously I get the picture of the white part and the black part, right, together, but they are together forming that circle, right? So it's a tight relationship. But if you hire somebody, a COO from the outside, you have to build that trust. And how do you do that? What would be some of the advice?
Well, I'll give an example. So how would we do that if we were in a typical marriage relationship, right? How would a husband and wife or 2 partners in a relationship, how would they build trust? Well, they would communicate honestly with each other. They would share their vulnerabilities and their fears. They would share their excitement. They would ask each other for support. They would support the other. They would make time for each other. They would have date nights. They would get out of the house together and go do fun stuff and disconnect a little bit. They would spend time connecting and staying present with the other person and not being too busy in their own day-to-day. Well, that's exactly what the CEO and COO need to do. They need to get out of the office and go do stuff together once in a while, like weekly. Go for a run, play squash, play tennis, play golf, have a beer, go have lunch or coffee together frequently to stay connected. Put your phones away and just talk to each other. How's it going with your business area? How's it going with the rest of the leadership team? What are you struggling with? Hey, I saw you screwed this up the other day. I think you should do this. But you're doing it in a private way without the kids around, right? You're talking to them to help grow them and encourage them. So it's just those same things, right? It's honestly opening up to each other about the stuff you're struggling with inside of the company, and then making sure that my job as the COO is to shine the spotlight on the CEO, and the CEO's job is to shine the spotlight on the COO. Our job is to make each other look good internally. By the way, you mentioned the yin and yang symbol. It's actually on the cover of my my book, The Second in Command. That was the image I chose for the cover, as that yin and yang, because it just, for me, seems so poignant. It's exactly how I view that relationship. It's the most important relationship in the company, more than any other C-level role, is that CEO and COO relationship, for sure.
Absolutely. And then you mentioned the family. So it's also, you have to have a unified front in front of the employees, right? In terms of, like, if there are disagreements, they get handled behind closed doors, not in front of everybody. It has to be, it's like this tight relationship between 2 people that are running the company.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever really saw my parents fight, and I was probably 17 or 18 years old, and it really scared me because for 17 or 18 years, I never saw them fight or argue. I'm sure they did lots of it, but they did it by themselves. They did it without us around. They did it in a way that protected us and cared for us, right? So it's okay to have conflict. It's okay to have arguments. It's okay to have disagreements. My parents were also married for the entire time until my mom passed away. They were together 35 years because they cared about the communication and the mutual respect and helping each other and caring for each other and growing together, right? But I'm sure they had lots of disagreements and fights. They just didn't do it in front of the employees, right?
Absolutely. Cameron,
and I talk about all this. I talk about all this in the book, The Second in Command, is in the third kind of part of the book, is really how to build that strong relationship. Because I think people will say, well, how do I hire a good COO? I mean, that's only the beginning part of the puzzle. Like, hiring them is one part, but what about onboarding them, right? What about building a strong relationship with them? there's lots of pitfalls that can happen when you hire somebody from the outside and bring them into the company. There's a huge opportunity to do that right, or to massively screw that up.
Absolutely. And that was actually my next question, is about the importance of training the COO, right? Giving them the tools that they need in order to succeed, because that is very important. I know you are definitely a big proponent of it, and you have your course and you have the material. I mean, you have your COO Alliance, which is also a support. It's, I don't know, can I call it a support group, or it's a mastermind for second in commands, because they need to be able to get the support that they need. So what's an ideal onboarding and training routine, or what is your advice in that area for newly hired COOs?
So yeah, and the COO Alliance is really, it's the only network of its kind in the world for the second in command. And it's kind of part community, part mastermind, part accountability group, part training center for all of these COOs from around the world. We've got about 170 members. So the onboarding, to really truly be effective, the first part of the onboarding is to remember that the COO needs to understand the core of the organization, right? Your vivid vision, your core values, your core purpose, your BHAG, the history of how you got where you are, all of the crazy stories that got you from where you are to where you are, and the real gut-wrenching, honest truth SWOT analysis of where you are today. They need to understand that. Most COOs, if you hire them properly, don't need any skill development, because you've hired somebody who already has the skills to grow the company for the next year or so, right? What they need, though, is the indoctrination into the cult or the culture. So it's really making sure that you spend days and weeks indoctrinating them into that, introducing them to all the people, introducing them to all the systems, so they really understand the core DNA of the company. And I think a lot of companies don't do a good job with that. Second thing is to remember that the COO is going to be like a big boulder. You're bringing this huge boulder in and you're dropping them into a pond. And their job is to get to the bottom of the pond. They'll do it perfectly. The COO will get their job done, but there will be ripples on the pond. And if you don't watch for those ripples, there's going to be good ripple effects and bad ripple effects. Both of those make huge impacts on the organization. So the CEO's job and the leadership team's job is to watch for some of those unintended consequences and some of those ripple effects that are happening, instead of being so myopic that you're only focusing on helping the COO. What about some of the people in the organization that are pissed off that they didn't get the job? Or what about some of the people that are upset that they used to report to the CEO and now they get to or have to report to the COO, right? Or what about people in the organization that don't love all of these new systems or ideas that are coming in, right? So you have to watch for some of those, or the COO is bringing in 3 of their favorite employees to come with them, and they're replacing a couple of people that maybe have been in the company for 5 or 10 years. So there's all these little ripple effects that can happen. Usually it's all good, but that's important as part of the onboarding, is to watch for that. And that's almost never talked about. And then, yes, once they're in their role, yes, giving them a community, like being a member of the COO Alliance, where they can connect with others, they can share resources, share best practices, they can get introductions, and they can scale themselves as a leader and get systems to grow their company. It's hugely powerful, right? For the amount of money that it costs, it's a no-brainer for companies to do that.
Absolutely. So really the moral of the story is, like, start a relationship right by hiring correctly and knowing exactly what are you hiring for. So you make your list, you understand what are you going to delegate to the COO, you understand what the COO is going to do. Then you onboard them correctly by really indoctrinate them into the culture, into understanding where things are at, really give them the open book picture of what is happening, and support them. And support your staff, because it is a change. If it is a change, if the first time you hire a COO, make sure that the communication is there, and give them the training that they need, give them the support that they need, so they also have a way to bounce ideas or concerns or get the coaching that they need. And then, continue that relationship, build their relationship, nurture their relationship, because you have to continue creating it. Otherwise, you're not going to have that relationship. It's just like in any relationship.
Right. There's another thing that I often think about with the COO recruiting as well, and it's that most great COOs are not out looking for a job. They have a job. Right. They're working for a great company. They have no intention of quitting the company they're working for. And for you to want to go and poach them and bring them into your company, you probably need a great executive search firm to help you bring those people over, because they're not going to see your job posting when you put it out there. So I have a couple of fantastic executive search firms that I introduce all my clients to. If anybody wants an intro, they can email me. But it's important to think about, what are you looking for and how can you find a couple of people that can help you poach those people? I think that's critically important.
Absolutely. And if you want to give a shout out to those companies, go ahead. I mean, we can also include that.
I don't name them publicly. They're partners of the COO Alliance, but if any of your listeners want to send me an email, I'm happy to do an introduction for sure. Or
Absolutely.
I can introduce you to them offline as well.
Okay, good. And so give us your email. So that's a great opportunity to how to contact you.
Yeah, the email is Cameron@CameronHerold.com.
Great. Very easy to understand. And definitely, and Cameron, you're so good at answering your own emails and really being in communication. So I definitely encourage our listeners to communicate to you, find out more about the COO Alliance. Definitely go and buy the book. Again, it's Second in Command, Unleash the Power of Your COO. And anything else that you would like to mention about the book or anything else for our listeners before we end off?
Yeah, there's one part that I was just thinking about, and it's funny because you said that I'm good at answering my own emails. My assistant handles about 50% of my email communication for me now. And anyone who's thinking that it's time to hire a second in command, the first thing you need to do is ask yourself, do you have an executive assistant? Right? If you don't have an executive assistant, you are one. You need to hire an executive assistant to get a lot of that stuff off your plate. And that'll give you 6 to 8 more months at least to be working on the core areas of the business. It'll save you all that time and money of maybe hiring a COO a little bit too early, because you don't want to be offloading a bunch of work and then still be stuck on doing $20 an hour tasks.
That's very true. And actually, that's what we talked about in our previous podcast, and I'm going to include that in the show notes as well, is we actually talked about how to delegate to an executive assistant. And actually, I had a client that listened to that podcast and that encouraged him to go and hire an executive assistant. And it completely changed the way he operates his business. And he was able to open a second business because he realized that, he has to delegate those tasks that are not really getting him to where he wants to go. So absolutely.
I've now got my executive assistant, Meredith, who's been with me for 7 years, is now hiring an executive assistant to report to her to offload about 30 to 40% of the stuff she works on that's very admin, very kind of routine stuff that we can't get automated necessarily. So Meredith can take on higher, more impact projects for me as well. So, when I've got my executive assistant hiring an assistant, it really begs the question of how can you be a real entrepreneur, a CEO without one?
That's very true. Absolutely. But Cameron, thank you so much for being again a guest on this podcast. It was, as always, a great conversation, and I'm sure our listeners learned a lot out of it, and they will reach out, and hopefully they will all reach out and buy the book, because it's definitely information that every entrepreneur needs to know, whether you're hiring right now or in the future. It's all data that you can use. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, Addie. Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.